Which Deltarune / Undertale boss is actually the strongest between SANS, JEVIL, and SPAMTON NEO? Today I will be doing a huge contest to figure out who the definitively strongest boss is that Toby Fox has made. First of all, the contestants. SANS from Undertale. You fight SANS at the end of the Genocide route in Undertale, and he is one of the hardest bosses and the oldest of the 3 bosses. JEVIL from Deltarune Chapter 1. You can find him in the basement of the Queen's Mansion, and he was for a long time known as the hardest boss in Deltarune. That was until Chapter 2. And finally, SPAMTON NEO from Deltarune Chapter 2. You fight him at the end of the Snowgrave route, also referred to as the Weird route, and he is one of the strongest, and some people consider him to be the strongest Deltarune boss yet. But which is actually the strongest? That's why I'm here today, because I will prove with 6 different categories on which boss is actually the hardest to defeat, and I will crown a winner at the very end. Let's get this started. Category number 1, attacks. As you should know, all 3 of these bosses have very hard attacks, but one that sticks out the most as some of the most hardest attacks is JEVIL from Chapter 1. The reason I give this category to JEVIL is due to the unpredictability in JEVIL's battles. Most of SPAMTON NEO's and SANS attacks are very predictable. Usually they're in the same order as they were the last time you played. JEVIL's, while still in the normal order, a lot of them are random and shoot things in random places. You can't memorize almost any of JEVIL's attacks. The only attack that JEVIL has that you can truly memorize is his final attack, which is also a category for later. So I am giving the attack category to JEVIL from Chapter 1. Category number 2, longevity. Which of these 3 bosses have the longest boss fight? Well, let's look at this real quick. JEVIL, even after his final attack, you must still make sure he's fully sleepy before you can spare him for sure. But if instead you want to fight him, it is such a long battle. Honestly, I haven't even done my research to know if you can beat him by fighting him instead of sparing him. But all I know is that's going to take a very long time. But SANS battle has 2 phases. And it is by far out of these 3 the longest one to defeat. I have fought in these 3 bosses multiple times before completely deciding and making this video in general. I fought all 3 of these bosses, and SANS always took me the longest to defeat. So I am giving category 2 longevity to SANS, which is now 1-1-0. JEVIL has 1 point, SANS has 1 point, and SPAMTON NEO currently has 0 points. Category number 3, assistance. How many people help you during your battle against these certain bosses? First of all, let's immediately rule out JEVIL. No matter what, the JEVIL fight, you will always have Ralsei and Susie to help you. Next, you might think that it may be a tie between SPAMTON NEO and SANS, because in the Snowgrave route, you fight SPAMTON NEO one-on-one, and in SANS battle, you always fight him one-on-one. But that's the thing. In the pacifist route, you can fight SPAMTON NEO with Ralsei and Susie by your side, which automatically means that category 3 assistance goes to none other than SANS Undertale. Next, category 4, intimidation. Intimidation is, in a battle, which one is seriously the most intimidating one to look at. As you look at the three, especially with their face portraits, it's kind of not really a winner. One's a clown, one's a skeleton, and one's a scammer. They're not that intimidating looking. But then you look at their full body sprites, and by far the most intimidating looking boss out of the three is definitely SPAMTON NEO. He has got the shape, obviously. He's pretty skinny, but he has these huge wings, and he also has what appears to be like a gun similar to Mettaton Neo's. And what's really cool is that compared to SANS and JEVIL, SPAMTON NEO is definitely the most intimidating looking, which means I am giving category 4 intimidation to SPAMTON NEO, his first win so far. Category 5, backtrack ability. This one may seem like one that all of them will have, but if you've ever fought all three of these bosses, you will know that one takes the cake for this specific category. In SANS battle, you can backtrack very far back. You can backtrack, I believe, all the way to Hotland. And I believe you can't take the Riverman in the Genocide route, but still, going back to Hotland is a long ways to go to get a lot of items from like burger pants, etc. But same thing with JEVIL. Except JEVIL, you can literally travel the whole chapter 1 without, like, once you approach JEVIL, you can always go back and get all the items you need before fighting him. But how about SPAMTON NEO? Sure, in the pacifist route, you can backtrack and you can get prepared before the battle. But in the Snowgrave route, this is the only coincidence. This is the only time that you are unable to backtrack very far. For example, in SPAMTON NEO battle, I got to SPAMTON NEO and I wanted to go back to get some food. Luckily, there's a vending machine right before the SPAMTON NEO fight. But I also figured out I did not have the strongest sword available for Chris. So you know what? I decided to go back, but you can't. Ralsei and Queen are talking and they're blocking the way. So technically, even though it's a slight advantage, category 5, which is backtrack ability, will go to SPAMTON NEO. And finally, category 5, the final attack. Which one out of the three have the hardest final attack? First of all, SPAMTON NEO's attack has this huge SPAMTON NEO, and it basically, like, it has this whole, like, thing about sucking in a bunch of, like, dollar symbols, and then shoots out these gas balls, almost, of SPAMTON's face. It's a hard attack, but definitely, in my opinion, not the hardest out of the three. JEVIL's attack, though, is very hard. JEVIL's attack starts with a bunch of his devil knives, I believe they're called, falling from the sky, and one huge one at the end, which is just for aesthetic, because it's not even a threat whatsoever. But it is a very hard attack to dodge. But SANS Undertale has one of the hardest attacks for its final attack I have ever seen. First of all, he does 4 wall slams. Then he sends these bones in a certain pattern that is very easy to trip you up. Then hits you against the wall again. Specifically, I believe it's the left side. And then sends you to the right side. You have to dodge a wave of bones. Then you get hit with a bunch of other wall attacks. Advanced ones, because they go on multiple sides. And then finally, the Gaster Blaster Circle, which is definitely the hardest final attack out of the three. So, category 5, final attack, I am giving to SANS. So this officially means that in 3rd place is JEVIL. JEVIL got 1 point and that being the attacks category. Next, number 2 in second place with the silver medal is SPAMTON NEO. He won intimidation and backtrack ability. He is the second hardest boss out of the 3. And as most of you might already know, SANS is number 1 after winning longevity, assistance, and final attack. Congratulations, SANS. So after close evaluation, I can finally say that SANS is the strongest boss that Toby Fox has ever made. SPAMTON NEO coming in second, and JEVIL coming in third. Thank you for watching.